Hi, it's Kennedy Casey here, and today we're going to be talking about something really interesting. It's how to become the most interesting person in the room. And this video is not one where I give you cheap tricks to gerrymander conversations to go your way to make you feel like the best person and the coolest person in a way that's false. It's one that's to help you become a genuinely interesting person, regardless of what room you're in, where in the world you are, who you're in conversation with. One that allows you make a lasting impression on the people you meet. We've all met people like that who are incredibly memorable, who when we come in contact with them, we actually can't stop thinking about them. So how do you become that? Here's 5 things that I know have not just worked for me. And I'm not giving you this as some sort of hack because these are not hacks. These are things that you have to become over time. But 5 things I know to be battle tested, to be tried and true, and definitely will make anyone, no matter how smart you think you are or are not, the most interesting person in the room. The first thing is curiosity. You actually have to become a really curious person. You know, when you think about it, when we meet people who leave a lasting impression on us, there's probably something they're curious about. It could be a scientific problem, it could be a business, it could be an economic problem. No matter what it is, they are deeply curious about something. And one way to become a really interesting person is to become someone who is deeply curious about at least one thing. Ideally, one thing. You probably don't want to be that curious about so many things because it's very difficult for you to keep up. So get very curious about something. One thing that we do is to self-sabotage in some sense. You know, I've met someone, for example, who is a really good artist. She knows how to make very abstract paintings and she has these really cool explanations for them. But she doesn't think it's a cool thing because she doesn't have a business card or, have the words to introduce herself when she goes to dinner with people who work in much more corporate jobs. But that self-sabotage that doesn't make very much sense in the context of being an interesting person. If anything, the more niche what you do is, the more unique it is, the more you don't have a name for it, the more interesting you are. So lean into those things that you find that you're already curious about today and pursue them to the latter because those things make you stand out. The second thing is you have to learn skills. You have to get really good at something. So curiosity and developing a skill set are like two sides of the same coin. They're like fraternal twins in some sense. For you to genuinely pursue a curiosity to the latter, you need a skill because you can't just intellectually embrace something and say, I'm intellectually curious about it. That's not true. That's false. Maybe you're just playing to the crowd in some sense. For you to be genuinely curious about something, you need a corresponding skill that allows you to interrogate and investigate that thing you're curious about. If you're curious about a scientific problem, if you're curious about electricity, then you need to get good at physics. You need to get really good at mathematics, at logic, symbolic logic, arithmetic, very simple things like that allow you become someone who can deeply investigate that problem without delegating it to other people. So you genuinely have to get good at something. People also don't take you very seriously. You lose credibility and reputation if you're someone who is intellectually curious, but actually has no skill or has no willingness to develop the skill to pursue that. So not just should you be curious, you should develop a skill that allows you pursue your curiosity. The third thing here is get really good at storytelling. When you think about most of human history, and notice how chronocentric our notion of history and civilization is, most of human history is stories. Human history is written in stories. It's stories of bravery, of trials, of conquest, of wars, of sainthood. All of those are the things that are compiled and passed down from generation to generation. And that's how we make sense of the world we live in. And that's exactly what we humans do. We think in terms of stories. We understand in terms of stories. And by becoming a really good storyteller, you're someone who can leave a lasting mark on people. Because when you talk, even when explaining the most basic fact, you have a way of weaving storytelling into that. When older people, our grandfathers, grandmothers are really good at telling stories, they're like walking dictionaries of stories, as it were, because they've had so many experiences. But you don't necessarily need to have that many experiences to become good at storytelling. You really become good at storytelling by being present in the moment. When you're going through something, Try to understand, how am I feeling? What am I seeing? What are all my five senses perceiving and observing? When you read the best storytellers, whether that's through books or through music or through stand-up comedy, you can practically smell the air they were breathing at the time they were going through that experience, because they have such a way of explaining in crucible detail to you what they were seeing, what they were smelling, what the colors were, what the weather was, what the shirt the person who they were in conversation with was wearing. All of that helps form the story, helps build it up, and take it to that crescendo where they then land what exactly they're trying to say. So for you to become someone who's really interesting, get really good at storytelling. One of the ways I also try to get better at my storytelling is by just listening to people who are great at storytelling. I love Dave Chappelle. I think he's one of the greatest storytellers of our time. And I've probably listened to most things he has put out in the past 10 years. So find people who are good storytellers, listen to them, try to understand what they do well, and over time, it sort of absorbs. You become a sponge that absorbs all the great things you learn from people who are around you, and then you can deploy that while telling stories to other people. The fourth thing here is be a good listener. That's something that I don't think we do a good job of now, because everyone has a stage. Everyone, can create a social media channel and be in front of the camera the way I am now and be on a stage. But listening to other people, look, even if you're the most selfish, self-interested, narcissistic, self-loving person, listening to other people helps you even fulfill those selfish aims. Because when you listen to other people, you realize how interesting people are. And people are so, 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 so interesting. Everyone has an interesting story if you just listen to them. And when you listen to them, you get to just learn more. You learn about things you did not know. You have more stories because you very easily can, amalgamate and have a compendium of different stories from different people. And that even that reinforces your ability as a storyteller. So people also like it when you listen to them. People like it when they feel heard. People like it when they feel like others are paying them a listening ear. There's nothing more than that. And it really endears you to people. And because not very many people listen, if you become someone who listens, then you're really memorable, and people would find you really interesting and remarkable. And the fifth and final thing here, this is probably the most important, is to be authentic. We have all been in conversations and situations with people who just lie, or who try to make themselves what they are not and talk themselves up, or spend, the entire dinner talking about all the cool things they've done, that week. And, we don't really like those people. We're not really fond of them. They are not memorable, or even if they are, not in the positive ways that they would think. So become really authentic. It's okay for you to feel insecure. It's okay for you to feel like you're not enough. But people actually don't want to see you covering that up in ways that are mischievous. That's not what you want to do. Think about it. Think about the people you love the most, or people you feel most comfortable with and your most authentic self around. Maybe your best friends, maybe your family, maybe people who you grew up with when you were younger. Do you remember how good you feel when you're around those people? And the exact way you feel, because you're most authentic in those settings, the exact way you feel when you're authentic is the exact way other people feel around you when you're your most authentic self. When you're in situations where you have to lie or talk yourself up or say all these things to not be true, because you're trying to cover yourself, the authentic version of you, because you're probably worried people will not like that. You know how you feel in those situations. You feel less than. You don't feel good about yourself. That's exactly how other people who are in that situation feel. So the way other people feel about you is the way you feel about yourself, is the way you come off, is the way you come across to other people. So invest, do everything you can, no matter how painful it is, to come off as authentic, to always be your authentic self, to allow your strengths shine, to allow your weaknesses shine. And like I said earlier, everyone is so interesting, including you. And this, everything I've said is sort of self-reinforcing, because if you spend time understanding that other people are interesting because you listen to them, you would know logically that you're also a very interesting person. And you'll stop selling yourself short by trying to show up as inauthentic because you deeply believe in the power of your own story, regardless of who you are, regardless of where you come from, regardless what challenges you've been through, what backgrounds you have. You know and understand deeply that you're someone who is really interesting, and that allows you to come off as authentic. To recap, here are 5 ways to become the most interesting person in whatever room you go into. The first is be really curious. Get very curious about something. Secondly, learn a skill. The third thing is become really good at storytelling. The fourth thing here is be a good listener. Spend time listening to other people and you'll find out how interesting they are. The fifth and final thing is be authentic. Show up as your most authentic self, and people would find you memorable and you'll endear them very deeply. I hope this video is incredibly helpful. If you found it meaningful, please subscribe to the channel to see more videos like this. And feel free to send this to someone who you think would derive value from watching this video. Thank you very much and see you soon.